Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Monday in the Riv, and it's going to be, well, it's finally going to actually get a little warmer today, supposedly. So
Yeah,
let's
60
welcome it.
degrees.
Let's welcome the warm weather.
But
It's been,
here's the funny part about it. At around 2 o'clock, it's going to get cold and breezy because with the sun being blocked by the eclipse, the crickets will start, the birds will start. We're going to get a cool breeze because of the change in temperature and because of the darkness. So,
yeah,
but that's only going to last for 2 minutes. So,
yeah, that's right. So
and as
temporary,
they always say, if you don't like the weather in Massachusetts, wait 5 minutes.
temporary. So it's Monday morning in the Riv, and I hope everybody read CJ's weekend flush. We're talking about Watergate 2.0, and CJ, I read that, and you were very, very thorough in what they said and everything else. But let's see if we can condense this for our viewers, our friends here. Bottom line is all that hyperbole by uh, our people over there in the water department basically is that they have not run their department properly for years. What a surprise. Department spot not being run efficiently and effectively in the city of Fall River. Wow, what an amazing epiphany this is. I can't believe it. Well, maybe we should have got the tip when they had to keep the former director on as a consultant. Or maybe they just wanted to give him a side paycheck. Who knows? Just like they do in a financial department. She can't do the job with her entire office staff. Get her a consultant, get her a financial analyst, get her everything. We pay. They say we got money, but we got no money. Now they're looking for every kind of override in the history of the world. Listen, enterprise shouldn't be dipping into stabilization funds. Duh. What's the word for stabilization? What's the definition? Look it up in a dictionary. You're not supposed to be using that for regular expenses. You're actually supposed to put together a budget that funds your regular expenses. Where's all this money go? We did a forensic audit of the healthcare system and found horrifying illegalities and incompetence. I believe if you did that with virtually every department in the city, you would find the same thing. Isn't it amazing that nobody can run anything right? But what's more infuriating is that they don't care and they never fix it. You know why? They don't have to pay. We do. Raised it 23%, raise it 23% on a base. And then compound that giant base. How about doing it the other way? Raise it 5%, and at the end of 10 years, then you increase it 23%. Because by that time, there'll be nobody left in the city, and we'll be in receivership, and you won't be able to do it. No, they want to pick your pocket big time now. 23% increase for water that we own. And I guess Linda got called out, on a local talk show in We Suck at Radio or WUSSR or whatever you want to call them. She was, I guess, posed a question, trying to, or a statement was made that you're trying to use this as a revenue stream, a business. Oh, no, that's not true. That's not true. And then it was Nelson. Then he said, well, you said we're going to pay more even if we use less water. What's wrong with that? And he showed him Wellesley that hasn't had an increase in 11 years. But then Michelle Dion was also on that show, and she did pipe in and say, oh, yes, they did say that. I asked that question specifically. So you're telling me if I use less water, I'm still going to pay and pay more. That is correct. So you tell me if that's not a business. You tell me that it's not being used as a revenue stream. When you charge people more money than is necessary to secure that product, it has now become a business. Because you have to make a profit to pay yourself. It's not just a service you're offering. Giving the people their own water, the water that we own. If I buy this bottle of water for 50 cents a bottle, and I open up a store to sell it for $1 a bottle, it's a business. Because that's the way businesses work. This is outrageous. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it over to you because you did such a good job on your weekend flush.
The interesting thing about all of it was the fact that, and I spoke with a couple of people about the appearance on We Suck at Radio, and a lot of people believed that it was a setup because Michelle Dion was put on there with Linda. Now, Linda voted no on the water and sewer rate increases during the ordinance committee meeting. That's not unheard of for Linda. Sean Kadim reduced the water rate by 12 cents because there was money in the stabilization fund to offset it by 12 cents per CCF. But again, all we're doing is kicking the can down the road, as I said in the weekend flush. You're kicking the can down the road because, as was said during the ordinance committee meeting, if the increase doesn't go through this year, that 23% is going to go through next year. And it will probably be higher. And the 5% will probably be 8%. They're just kicking the can down the road. They've got to look at what they're doing in the water department that it's not balancing out. Now, Linda made a motion at a previous city council meeting, and it carried, to perform or to have a performance audit done on the water department and the sewer department. Now, I'm not sure what a performance audit's going to show because they were willing to do that right away. There was no question about it. But if you do a performance audit and you're bringing in a consultant to do the job, is that positive or negative for the performance audit? In my opinion, it's negative. But according to, I guess, the water department, that's just standard practice. Keep your friends employed. And that employment's going to cost the taxpayer money. That employment's going to cost the water user money. Money that people are having a hard enough time meeting now. And I'm going to let you know, in case you haven't seen them or heard about it, Citizens for Citizens, in their low-income home energy assistance program, has funds to pay delinquent water bills. So if you are on a fixed income, and I forgot what the income limit is for a single family or two-person family, the limits are higher than they've been in the past. You may qualify to have your water bill paid, but it's got to be delinquent. It's got to be delinquent. So if you can qualify for that, I would highly suggest you get your application prepped so that what you can do is not pay your bill for a couple of months and go delinquent. And have somebody else pay it.
Well, I'm telling you right now, CJ, I'm throwing a flag on this play. I'm calling bullshit. Bullshit. Performance audits are bullshit. Politicians always like performance audits because they take the word of the people who's they're auditing. There's only one kind of audit you can ever trust, an independent forensic audit by an outside agency, not the state. Remember when they called down the state treasurer to do an audit? It was all horse shit. It was all horse shit. I can prove it. When I sued him on a health care, part of that arbitration said that Chapter 32B stipulates you have to do an audit, not a performance audit, a real audit of the health care. Well, guess what? The city contended they did an audit every single year. Then, under cross-examination, the auditor, Bruce Haig, the city treasurer and city auditors all admitted they never did an audit. They called it two different things. They called it a reconciliation, and they had some other euphemism, which meant they made the numbers fit. They said this is how much they were supposed to have, and then they figured out what numbers they had to plug in to get to that number. They admitted under oath that they did not do an audit, and you know the reason why? Nobody had any damn idea where any of the money was. It flies all over the place in this city. You ask them where the money goes? I don't know. No matter how long it is. That happened in 91. It happened again in 2008. We had 25. You remember the 25 insurance accounts that had been dormant for 25 years in the bank? Who has 25 bank accounts with money in them that they don't even know about? For 25 years. 25 years. In 2016, I sent a letter to then CFO or whatever her title was at the time, Mary Sahadi. They had taken in money from employees for their health care and did not deposit it into the employee segregated trust fund. And they admitted it. Yep, you're right. We're going to give it back to you. And I went, wait a minute. I'm throwing another flag on the play. Where did that money go after you collected it? What accounts did it go to? I sent them a letter that said I wanted to know every account that money migrated through till it finally got discovered. 2024. I sent that letter in 2016. I still have a copy of it. Never got an answer. They don't have a freaking clue. They never did have a clue. This city is a mess. Always has been, all the way back to 91. Nobody knows where the money, they just keep robbing Peter to pay Paul, shifting money from everywhere, retirement fund, healthcare fund, any fund they can find, stabilization fund, you name it, they'll find something, and they move it around like Chinese checkers. This is why we need a mayor who's going to come in here and say, the first thing I'm going to do is run a full forensic audit on this city and every single department. So I, as the mayor, and every single taxpayer in the city knows where every single penny is when I start my budget. And you'll know where your money's being spent, and I will tell you why and how it's being spent. Because that's the way you're supposed to run a city, like they do in Newton. Not here. And Watergate 2.0 is an example of what they're doing. And they're trying to make you think that they're doing something really good. Oh yeah, we'll get a performance audit. No. Of course you're going to get a performance audit. Because nobody cares. Yeah. And that's the problem, Mr. X. Yeah, you look at, it's not like this happens like a solar eclipse. No, it's something that everybody's got to run out and see. Oh my God, a solar eclipse! That might not happen again in my lifetime. I don't know. This happens every day in the city of Fall River. Think about it. You watch the council meetings. Think about how many council meetings you went to when they ask a question, a simple question, to our financial team. What is she getting? 140 grand, 150 grand? What's her financial assistant getting? 100 grand? What's her consultant getting? 100 grand? What's everybody in her office getting? What's the bill for all of those people doing our finances? $1 million? Wages plus benefits? And every time they ask a question, it's like, duh. Oh, let me get back to you on that. I have no idea right now. Oh, these numbers are only for discussion. Really? When Bob Connors went in front of that council, he was mandated to have the numbers. That's what his job is. You go down to the city council meeting for a meeting on finances and you don't have the financial numbers necessary to answer the questions, and the city council lets them get away with it and always does. This is why we need a whole bunch of new councilors and we need a new mayor, because this is intentional malfeasance by public officials. And with that, CJ, back to you.
I must say that maybe there's a wind blowing, a wind of change, and hopefully the people will feel that wind and they will take it and make it seriously appropriate and make it happen. And you're right, Mr. X. Maybe Coogan will have an epiphany with the solar eclipse. To not want to steal from the taxpayers. Oh, please. They all like to steal from the taxpayer. That's just the way he is. That's just the way all the departments are. And it's a shame that they work that way. When you can't trust your government, it says a lot. And I even had a quote in the Weekend Flush that was pretty clear on that. And you have to admit that one way or another, the people are going to find out. Okay? And I want, here are two of the quotes that were in this weekend's flush. Crime to many is not crime, but simply a way of life. If laws are inconvenient, ignore them. They do not apply to you. That was by Dick Francis. And guess what? That's Paul's mantra. That's Paul's mantra. And here's the other one. The accomplice to the crime of corruption is frequently our own indifference. Bess Meyerson. I find these odd quotes out there. You just got to look a little bit. But they speak volumes on what we're going through in our city government. Corruption, theft, misappropriation of funds, spending funds illegally, spending funds wrongly. I will say one thing though. Paul, you forgot something. On the agenda for this Tuesday's meeting, which I thought was very, very interesting. Because my big pet peeve on receiving grants is that Paul always submits them to the city council with accept and expend. Well, mayor gets a grant. Mayor and grant order of $8,613 from the Massachusetts Office of Outdoor Recreation for the Inclusion and Accessible Outdoor Recreation Events Grant Program. He didn't say expend it, though. He just said, we got it. Here's another thing that questions me, and this just dictates how we see questionable acts in government. The mayor and orders appropriating $135,773.43 from fiscal year 23 free cash to FEMA COVID fund. And B, $2,600,000 $682,676 from EMS fund free cash to FEMA COVID fund. Number one, what is the COVID fund? And why do we have a FEMA COVID fund in our accounts? I thought the COVID money was to be used for COVID. So if we spent it properly on COVID, why do we have to replace it? These are where the questions come up. Am I saying that they've done something wrong? I don't know. Am I accusing them of doing something wrong? Again, I don't know. But why does the money have to be allocated from free cash to these FEMA COVID accounts? Almost $3 million, if not over. And we got to put it back into the COVID account, the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency COVID account, COVID fund. Why do we have to do that? Was that misappropriated funds? I want to know. Did they misappropriate the funds? When Paul was making masks and delivering them? Did they do something wrong? You know, if you make a mistake, admit it. Apologize for it. And say very clearly, I made a mistake. We can handle it. We can handle that question. We can handle that statement. But when you try to cover it up this way, people start to ask questions and questioning your credibility. And that's something you don't want to have questioned, is your credibility. This show has had its credibility questioned several times. And we've even had false charges thrown at us. And the powers that be decided we're going to believe the false accusations as opposed to you. As a matter of fact, I was told, if you want to hold yourselves out to be press, then you have to be responsible. We are responsible. And we can call a politician anything we want. From thief to more vulgar words. And you can do it in a public meeting. And they can't stop you. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court ruled that it is your right. And they cannot stop you in a public meeting. They can't chastise you. And they can't cut you off, whether they like it or not. But you see, that would be exercising your rights. And in Fall River, they're afraid of people exercising their rights. Because then you start asking questions about water rates and sewer rates and refunding accounts that we have no idea why you have to put the money back in them. We don't know, but we're asking the questions. We're exercising our rights. And that's why we need a full forensic audit of the city of Fall River, of every department. And I don't want to hear this bull about performance audits. Okay? That's just like the audit that's in the agenda for Tuesday's meeting on an audit of the city budget. First and foremost, the audit of the city budget is very clearly wrong because the revenue did not meet the expenses. Expenses exceeded revenue. When that budget went through the city council, that's the way it was. And Michelle Dion asked that question and they ignored it. We heard the same answers. Oh, well, we got investments down the line. That's not funding a budget. That's not funding a contract. Funding a contract is saying, this is where the money is. This is where it's going. That's how it works. And if you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be in your job. Well, wait a minute, Bridget. You already said you can't do your job. I know that our city administrator said, I can't do finances when he took the job, so I'm not going to handle it. So what good is a city administrator who can't handle numbers? In other words, we're giving a job to somebody that can't do the job. That seems to be a mantra in the Coogan administration. If you can't do your job, please apply right away. We'll give you $100,000. I don't know. Maybe it's me.
Yeah, it's got to be you. I mean, they listen. Let's make this perfectly clear. This is this is incompetence by design. As long as you let them get away with it, they will. Now, you had a quote in your flush. I read this quote before. It's about the duty to maintain public trust in government from some of the case law that was pulled. I pulled from um, the Cornell Law School.
Oh, a reputable source.
Yeah, well, it's a quote from one of my not so favorite presidents, but I give credit where credit is due. This is under a quote that relates to the duty to maintain public trust in government. Quote, if the people cannot trust their government to do the job for which it exists, to protect them and to promote their common welfare, all else is lost. Well, look, it's been lost a long time in this city. They talk a game, but they don't listen. They don't care. It seems that the bigger the bureaucracy, the less people listen. I just got a call. Good thing I was muted. Because I left a message specifically in Boston for them not to call me until after 11 o'clock. They called me on my cell phone. They called me on my outside phone multiple times. So apparently they didn't listen to the message. Newton has a budget where every single penny is listed. Every single expenditure for the year is listed. And you can't get any additional money put into that budget for anything unless it's an unforeseen emergency. Like we had an earthquake and all the pipes broke. The water department can't go in there at the meeting right after the budget's passed and ask for more money, which they do virtually all the time. They are not abiding by their fiduciary responsibility to you and to this city. And this is malfeasance on the part of public officials. Nobody knows anything, but they all get their paychecks. They all have assistants, and assistants to the assistants to the assistants. And I hope you're right, CJ. I mean, we got a national election, but we have to wait another year after that to get rid of these bums, unless the R word is invoked, the recall. And I've heard a lot of people talking about that. But that's another issue. But what isn't at issue is this city has never been able to handle its money. Still can't. Never fixes it. Gets worse. In 1991, and I still have the newspaper headline that they said they were broke and we didn't have any money in the health care, and I did it with a hand calculator, and they got all these people in the office and found out that they didn't. We did a forensic audit. We found out that they've been robbing money for years. Not just that 1 year, but for years. And they had to pay us back. But I will never forget how, when that auditor rendered his decision, the opening of that arbitrator's award, he said, it is irrefutable that the city's books were in a total state of disarray. They didn't have a clue. The treasurer, the auditor, the outside CPA agency that was commissioned to do the annual audit, Nobody ever found anything. They didn't even attempt to find anything. And I have the sworn depositions because every word was taken by a court stenographer. I have the treasurer and auditor admitting they violated the law and backdated checks to a previous fiscal year, which is prohibited, after the new budget was passed, and they took money out of the new budget to pay the old budget bills, which they're not supposed to do, because you all know, or you should know, that we cannot deficit spend, and that when you close the books on a year, everything's supposed to be paid, but they weren't. And they didn't have the money to pay it. So they waited till the following year, they got new money in, and then they backdated the check. And you can't do that. When you're paying something from a budget that's been closed, it takes a special appropriation from the city council. That's why when labor unions get retroactive checks, they have to go to the council to get that money when they're being paid for a year that the budget has been reconciled already and closed. No, and they admit it. You put them under oath, they're all going to admit it. They don't have, and they don't care. See, that's the bottom line here. They do not care. Because all they keep doing is raising your taxes and raising your fees and 23% on a water bill. Shut up! Don't ask questions. We told you. We have to have this 23%. Forget about the $19,000 pay raises. Forget about all the new positions that I put in. Forget about all the opera money I pissed in a hole and didn't do a damn thing for the taxpayer. Forget about all that shit. Shut up, pay your bills, or go live in a tent. Or better yet, jump in the Taunton River or leave town. This is what you have. These people don't care. They stand there and it's a mutual admiration society. Oh, yes, look what we're doing. Oh, the boxing gym. Oh, look at what we did today. How much more money can we piss in a hole? What have we done for the taxpayer? Zero. Oh, we're doing so good. Look at how much money we have. Look at how much money we have. All this property, all this millions and millions of dollars worth of property that are not paying taxes, that are getting TIFs, that are getting ties, that are getting everything. We will judge how our city goes based on how much we're building. Not the fact that nobody can buy anything, that we can't keep small businesses in business, that we don't have any money, that you blew every single cent you ever got and you just keep asking for more. You're like a giant vacuum cleaner. And you know whose fault it is? The people who don't vote. The people who don't vote, okay? I will vote. I would rather write in, a squirrel's name in the next election for city council than vote for most of those incumbents. They are accessories before, during, and after the fact to stealing your money and destroying this city. All you got to do is look at it. The picture. Was it 1987 with the Flint? And who was standing there? Kenny Fiola. Do the math. 1987, 2024. Do the math. How many years has that been? And about 90% of those years, who's been in charge of economic development? Is the Flint better now than it was in 87? No. And it needed some help then. It wasn't like it was in the 70s and 60s. Is anything better in Fall River now? There is something better. The rich are getting richer. We're getting housing that we can't afford. We're getting tax bills we can't afford. We're getting water bills that we can't afford. Things are going good for the elitists. All those people in the picture, when they talked about this new lipstick on a pig move for the Flint, who was in the picture? Was it Carlos Caesar? Was it Joe Cavallo? Was it Jeff Godrow? Was it anybody from the Flint Neighborhood Association who worked diligently to try to help that neighborhood? No. Who was it? Jakey Auchinclaws. Jakey! Giving money to Paul to blow. Where's the money for the CSO? Why can't you get some federal money to take this bill away from us? The governor! Oh, affordable housing governor. Another $4 billion for affordable housing, but she'll let Paul never use any of it, not even touch a dime of the thing, and not give adequate public housing. And who else? Paul Schmidt, Carol Fiola. They're all in a picture. They're all in a picture. And they've done absolutely nothing for any neighborhood but their own, if they even live in a city. I know that Schmidt doesn't, and neither does Jakey. Jakey comes down here and gives Paul money to blow on his friends and his pet projects. And I'll tell you what, if you think that I'm fed up with this thing, I've been fed up a long time. And yeah, we're gonna get something all right. Yeah, the train. Yeah, that train is already gonna be. I'll tell you what. I'm a betting man. I'll bet anybody they want that 10 years from now we won't have a train, or it will be so severely cut. It will be cut within the first few years for ridership, like they did down the Cape. That train is bringing nothing down here except maybe some drugs from Boston. I don't know. But you think a train is going to fix it? It's like saying a battleship was going to fix it. The HMS Bounty was going to fix it. The Carousel was going to fix it. We've had more fixes in Fall River. Change the name to a gateway city. Change this. Change that. Keep putting another layer of lipstick on a pig. The only thing that fixes Fall River is giving the people in the city of Fall River a way to get a job, a way to make money. Fall River wasn't Newton, but every store was filled when we had mills working, and everybody in Fall River that wanted a job had a job. There were plenty of jobs around. Everybody was working. They may not have been rich, but they could afford to live. And therein lies the difference. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it back over to you.
You know, you brought something up about taxes. All these billions of dollars, as they've said, in new property, a majority of them, if not all of them, have received TIFs. If you read an article in the Herald News yesterday about St. Anne's Hospital potentially going to a nonprofit status, the city will lose $1.4 million in tax revenue. And do you know where they're going to replace that money? That money gets replaced by spreading it over all the other commercial properties. That's how it works. That's why we're so dead set against TIFs. Because every time a TIF is given, the amount of that money is spread out amongst the properties. People think we're talking out of our ass. We're not. We know what we're talking about. We've read the reports from reputable and credible universities. And I have a problem with that, especially when these TIFs aren't giving us anything. We're giving TIFs to people who are making market rate housing. Apartments they're going to rent for $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month. They're going to be making money hand over fist. And they're not going to pay anything in taxes. Because if they didn't get the TIF or the tie, whatever you want to call it, they couldn't get the HDIP, which is another tax break. This is how the system is abusive to the taxpayer, to the people. And we have to fight that. and we
You
have to
do,
fight it
CJ.
soon.
But let me just get Jeff made a comment. You got to get 2 or 3 jobs even to pay your rent. And he's right. But the old adage that when the rest of the country or the rest of the state gets a cold, Fall River gets pneumonia. Well, we're worse off than virtually everywhere else except maybe Appalachia. Appalachia. I don't know how they pronounce it. I think it's Appalachia where we're from down there. But listen, you're right, Jeff. But it's happening all over the country. That's how clueless they are in this city. They're trying to convince you things are good in this city where they're always worse, basically, than everywhere else because of the low amount of money we make. But I think a couple of shows ago, I read the stats that from obviously very reliable sources. It was on a national news that now, in order to even afford a starter home, you need to be making $106,000 a year. Where just 4 years ago, when the great orange ogre was in office, that cost was $50,000 for a home. And that's not everywhere, obviously. Look, unlike them, I'm not really stupid. I know that houses were always more expensive in California because the wages are also higher. You're going to buy a house in New York City area. It's obviously whatever the market can demand, but fundamentally it was a median. The median average was $50,000. You could get a home, maybe not. Can't get a mansion, but you could get a house. You could live the American dream. That's no longer true virtually anywhere in the United States. Anywhere. And that's what that study said. Nobody can buy a house. We have people now that are college graduates that move back in with their parents because they can't afford a house. And this is because of the government and the way they're running this government in Fall River and the government in Washington, D.C. They just keep spending money and the rich get richer. All the elitists, Nancy Pelosi gets to get her hair done during COVID. Gavin Newsom gets to go eat in the French Laundry with the people from, but this is the problem. There's a series on right now on FX, Shogun. It's a remake of the original series. It was on years ago. It's a really great series. The book's even better by James Clavell. One of the greatest books I've ever read. Great read. But in a Japanese culture, for you people who don't know it, and I know it fairly well, during the feudal era of Japan, when Shogun was supposedly took place, they had a society based on honor and a code, the code of Bushido, which means the way of the warrior, a warrior code, honor, politeness, etc. You know what the lowest class in the Japanese society during that era was? You had the nobles and the samurai and the fishermen. The lowest social strata, the people they looked down upon the most in that era were the businessmen. You know why? Because they felt businessmen had no honor at all. They worshipped profit. They worshipped money. And you know something? I think they were right. And with that,
That's one way to end. And I'll tell you now, it's definitely true. I have been watching that Shogun episode and all of them, and it's a very interesting program. If you can watch it, it is also airing on Hulu if you want to catch up, and on demand, and it's on FX, and it's a great program. And maybe you should consider it because it actually shows you the difference in our communities, in our lifestyles, and in the way we hold ourselves accountable. I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, Stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday. Enjoy the eclipse today. And don't look directly in the sun without some protective glasses.